Warning! Before watching this video, you must prepare to gain a surplus of knowledge. This video is a tool for all aspiring musicians who wish to have a greater understanding of music theory. On this note, welcome to... Hello ladies and gentlemen, and today we're going to be talking about texture in music theory. Now, a texture can be described as how much is going on in a piece of music at any given time. The music could be thick or thin, or contain, you can also say it could contain many or few voices. It might be only one rhythm, or it might have a melody line with accompaniment and or even interweaving melodies. Now, there are a couple definitions you're going to need to know for this. First, you're going to have to know what density means. Density, when you're talking about music, is how thick or thin the music is, the piece that you're hearing is. And when I say thick or thin, I mean if it's thick, it contains numerous voices in the piece. It has melodies and counter melodies and accompaniments and everything. If it's thin, it can be as little as one voice in the piece. Another definition you'll have to know is range. And a range in a piece of music can be wide or thin, and all that is it depends on the interval between the lowest and the highest note. And now, the moment we've been waiting for, the names of the actual textures in a piece of music. Now, don't worry about taking notes. I have more slides to come after this, so you don't have to rush to catch what I'm saying. In a piece of music, there are four main textures that we look for and we listen for. They're homophonic textures, homorhythmic textures, monophonic textures, and polyphonic textures. In a piece of music, there are certain signs that you look for to identify each of these textures, and I'll explain them in the next slides. Alright, now first up we have monophonic texture. A monophonic texture is a single melodic line with no accompaniment, and it's the simplest of all the textures. When remembering this, think of like, I'm going to face you mono-y mono. Mono means one, or like one versus one. So it's a single melodic line. Here's an example. As you can see, in both the top and bottom pieces of music, there's only one line of music. There are no accompaniment parts and no chords. That's what makes this a monophonic texture. Next is polyphonic textures. In a polyphonic texture, there are multiple voices that are relatively independent from one another. When thinking about this, think that poly means many. In polytheism, you worship many deities and many gods. So just like this, polytexture is usually two or more melodic lines that are performed at the same time. Notice how in each of these examples, both the treble and bass clef melodies are independent of one another. Homorhythmic textures. Homorhythmic textures are very easy to understand. Basically, each voice has the same or very similar rhythmic patterns. Notice in these examples, whether they have many or few voices, they each have the same rhythmic pattern. And finally, we have homophonic textures. Homophonic textures are characterized by a melody that stands out in a piece with instruments in the background accompanying it. It is by far the most frequent texture we hear today. And there are multiple voices in which a single dominating melody is accompanied by chords. We can see this in pretty much all the pop songs on the radio today.
you're doing what you're supposed to. Waking up too early, maybe we could sleep.
Notice how in this example, in the uppermost treble clef there's a melody, and underneath it, in the other treble and bass clef, there are chords that support it. That's what makes it a homophonic texture. So far we've learned that you can use both your eyes and ears to identify a texture in a piece of music. And I know what you're thinking. Ben, those last 5 minutes went by so fast. Texture is so easy. I got this. Quiz me right now. But we're not done yet. When analyzing a piece of music, you have to also be sure to recognize and label the primary elements of that texture, as well as the texture itself. The textual elements are called primary melody, the secondary melody, the parallel supporting melody, a static support, harmonic support, rhythmic support, and then harmonic and rhythmic support. So here's some information on the slides. A primary melody is the most important line of a musical texture. Most musical textures have one primary melody. In polyphonic textures, though, if there are lines of equal importance, there may be more than one primary melody. Basically, a secondary melody is any other melodic lines that are not equal in significance to the primary melody. Simple as that. A parallel supporting melody is a melody that has the same or similar arrangement to the primary or secondary melody. They often maintain a constant interval relationship with the melody they support. A static support is an unchanging element in a musical texture. The static supporting parts may be pedal tones or ostinatos. Harmonic support is the harmonic aspect of the accompaniment in a homophonic texture. Same thing goes with the rhythmic support. It's the rhythmic aspect of the accompaniment in homophonic textures. If they occur at the same time in a homophonic texture, we label them HRS for harmonic and rhythmic support. And that's that, boys and girls. You just completed Chapter 7, Texture and Textural Reduction. Give yourself a pat on the back. You all deserve a round of applause. Okay, now I want everyone out there to remember what you learned. If you ever need any help, if you want to go back and you think you forgot something, just rewind the video, baby. That's all it's there. And remember, stay extreme.